Testing. Is this thing on? I think it's on. I'm a little bit earlier today because I get people upset. Why are you late? Why are you late? I'm curious if people are celebrating because now I'm on time. You know, I can't do the whole that the streamers do. Maybe this is why I'm a 2-view streamer. It's because I lack the energy. Man, like, when you're young, and a lot of you are going to notice this. I don't want to talk like an old man or anything, but it's actually true because I asked other people. When you're young, a lot of things excite you. Like, it's kind of like, remember when you were a kid and you heard the pun that made you laugh so hard, and if you heard the same pun now, you'd be like, ugh. It's kind of the same with things when you're a teenager. Like, the first time I heard heavy metal music, I was like, oh my god, that is so awesome. And then when you first play your first-person shooter, you're like, oh my god, this is so real. But as you're growing in age, all of the things you like doing, I mean, you still like them, but they don't excite you. They're kind of like, I guess that's nice. It's kind of sad, you know? I guess like when you get drunk, you start appreciating life again, but that's a bad thing, right? Because like if you constantly get drunk, that's bad for your liver and you become an alcoholic, so don't do it. But I think it has something with brainwave patterns, right? Because when you get drunk, it numbs your brain, it numbs your senses, so you start enjoying things like you used to. But yeah, so I can't do that. Hey, you guys, how's it going? Welcome to the stream. It feels fake. I can't do it. See, I summoned the woman by doing the dance. I summoned Potty Gal. She has been invoked. We're going to talk about Canada today, but let's wait for more people to join. I wanted to stream with Short Fat Otaku, but unfortunately, and this is my personal opinion, I would like people to provide me the opposite evidence if I'm wrong. Short Fat Otaku only streams with transgender individuals or communists. And since I'm neither, he doesn't want to stream with me. Right? Go on his channel, look at the people he's inviting, and tell me that's not the case. It's not a bad thing, it's just his preferences. And I guess like I'm not part of his preferences. They say people like things on weed because they forget what it was like. I never had weed, and I don't think I ever will. So I don't know the experience of how you Americans call it being stoned. I don't know anything about that. Try exercising. It helps me to start enjoying things that I stopped enjoying. You know what? Maybe I'll go to a gym. Maybe I'll see. But I don't know if there's any gyms in my area, and right now the fuel costs here are at a historic high, so it would be very expensive for me to go daily to the gym. He's been on EFAP. Yeah, but like the thing with EFAP and Short Fat Otaku is that he wasn't streaming with EFAP. EFAP was streaming with him. So it doesn't count. I'm talking about like the people he invites on his channel and he streams with. Not like the people that invite him and he goes somewhere else. And I also guess like maybe I don't have the numbers of EFAP, huh? Like I would have to overtake Short Fat Otaku in subscribers, and then maybe he would consider. Doesn't want to stream with the troll. He did say that he likes the troll though. He likes the avatar. I appreciate it, by the way. It's kind of cool. It's good exercise to build a gazebo. Funny fact, like talking about the gazebo. Apparently the roof of a gazebo collapsed on a Romanian politician today, or it was like, sorry, like today I read about it. I guess it was yesterday. And he passed away. It's in the news. That's what happens when you build your own gazebo. That's what happens when you don't go to the experts. At least if the roof of my gazebo falls on me or on someone, I get someone to sue. But if I build it, can't sue myself now, can I? His streams are so boring. By the way, I need to ask a question. If I was to stream on Twitch, how many of you would still watch? It's actually very difficult to stream on Twitch. I would need content moderators to moderate the chat. And it would have to be extremely non-political. Like, I would have to just play video games and keep my political opinions to myself. It's very difficult. Nathan Helm, thank you for becoming a member. Really appreciate it. You can sue yourself in America. Well, I mean, I think you may. I haven't read at law school anything preventing you from suing yourself. There might be some laws, like in some cases, the judge can throw away a lawsuit if they don't think it's serious, like if they think it's a joke. Normally, it's difficult to do that. Like, there's some very small cases where, but I guess if you sue yourself, that might be part of it. Though, like, okay, so if you sue yourself, you pay damages to yourself. Why? Why would you do that? Unless it's like you sue yourself and you end up doing community service or something like that. But no, I just... Yeah, let me... You know what? I'm going to check it out. I'm going to see if there is anyone that sued themselves. There must be someone, right, on the world that sued themselves. So, person sues himself. Gabriel Nartea, thank you for the donation. I really appreciate it. If you die building a gazebo, you die as you live. Well, no, the person in Romania, they had the gazebo collapse on them. The roof fell. So, it wasn't technically dying while building. I mean, that's one thing, like if you build something and you're the one getting injured, it's one thing. But when it's someone else getting injured, Jesus, man. Like, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night knowing that I caused someone else to end up in a hospital because I didn't build something properly. I mean, that would just eat me up alive. I wouldn't be able to cope with it. So apparently, did the man sue himself after being hit by his boomerang? He won $300,000 in a judgment against himself after he was hit in the head with the boomerang he threw. Apparently, this is false. Okay, well, it does sound like false. Let me see if there's something else. Oh, no, hold on. Oh, God, I really hate... I really hate fact checkers like Snope. They say false, but then you find out, hold on. Because you think like, okay, so the story didn't happen. No, but there is something to the story. A Kentucky man who threw a boomerang that flew back and clobbered him in the head promptly filed a $300,000 lawsuit against himself, and he was awarded the money. But most amazingly is the fact that the guy will get the money from his insurance company, and he personally won't have to pay a cent. The Weekly News is, of course, a former supermarket tabloid now operating in an online form only, known for its fantastical fictional stories about subjects as a zookeeper being killed by elephant feces. So basically they're saying, well, it's this publication that's talking about this news, so it's probably fake. Okay, let me see if there's another case. Quora Digest. Has anyone sued themselves and won? Alright, well, Snopes can't get in here, so we're never going to be able to fact check these things. I was working for a commercial insurance company when I saw this happen. The owner of a mid-sized company gave his son a Corvette for a company car. His son was on the payroll as a manager. His duties were keeping his chair warm. He came home drunk one night and ran into his own garage door. He turned in a liability claim on his company car, claiming that an employee... Okay, but this is not suing yourself. Like, you're lying that someone else did it. Like, Jussie Smollett didn't persecute himself. I mean, he claimed that someone assaulted him. Turns out that person was himself, but like that's not suing yourself. If you sue your own company, this is actually something that can happen, right? So if you sue your own company or your own company sues you, it can be considered that you're suing yourself. Yeah, like if you're operating a company of one person and you're suing yourself, like the company sues you, then yeah. So Mr. Solomon founded a company named Solomon. He asked for an investment from different people. Unlucky company failed and suffered heavy losses, and finally company was liquidated. The company Solomon paid Mr. Solomon first, leaving only bits for other investors. The liquidator on behalf of the company sued Mr. Solomon to pay back the amount, making him accountable for the losses, and Mr. Solomon finally won the case. This is a landmark case. Yeah, like people find various loopholes and various ways to profit off the system, ways that even the legislator didn't think of. Usually, when that happens, the legislator quickly finds a way to plug that loophole. Like the first person that does it, they walk away, they manage to get the money, but the second person, not so lucky because it's usually covered by the legislation. The thing with the boomerang as well, it's like, well, just because you throw it and it comes back at you and it can hit you, from a legal standpoint, that's no different than, I don't know, like, let's say there's a hole in your basement and you leave it uncovered like a manhole, right? And you remove the manhole cover and then you fall into the manhole yourself the next day. I mean, technically, by that logic, you should also be able to sue yourself. So, no, I don't... The thing with the boomerang sounds ridiculous, right? Because it's the visualization of it. Like, you're throwing something, but it's coming back into you. But that could be just like... leaving the water running, and then there's you also put that electric cable and you electrocute yourself, right? And then you sue yourself for the damages. Like that's in the similar category. Like, it doesn't matter if you're hurting yourself by accident then, or you're just hurting yourself by throwing a boomerang. Solomon finds loophole. How slow was that news day? Yeah, well, where would be without Snopes to fact check? I don't know. Like, I mean, how did people manage to know the truth from fiction back in the old day? When my parents were alive, for example, there was no Snopes. When my grandparents were alive, there was no Dr. Fauci. How did they have the science? I thank you, Apfstrudel, for enjoying the stream. But yeah, so Dr. Fauci claimed that he is the science, and I'm wondering, like, how did my grandparents manage to have a society? I mean, there was no science. Dr. Fauci wasn't born yet. Or is it like, you know what I'm thinking? Like, maybe the science is the embodiment of an avatar. Like, every generation, the science chooses someone. And after Dr. Fauci resigns, someone else becomes the science. So it's maybe like a passing of the torch. But there can be only one, I guess. I haven't heard any other person on Earth claim that they are the science. Dr. Fauci is the first one. If you have any person in your country which made a similar claim, please let me know. I'm really interested in checking it out. But yeah, like, Dr. Fauci is the only... It's kind of like the story of the Avatar. Like, the Avatar manages to control all 4 elements, and after he is gone, a new Avatar is born. It's probably like that, I guess. When your parents were always alive, there was the truth. Your parents lived in the Soviet Union. The state decided the truth. Yeah, but how did the state decide the truth without Snopes? Like, the communists didn't have Snopes. This is an American invention. It's a Western bourgeoisie concept. How do you know the chair won't break? You have faith. It always worked, but it could break. I mean, we operate on faith on a lot of things, but like the faith, it's not really correct to say faith, right? Because you'd still base it on some things. So the reason the chair works is because you have seen other chairs working, and you probably sat on that particular chair, and you look at it, right? Like, you also look at the chair. Like, if you see that the chair is missing a leg, you probably won't sit on it. So you're not operating on faith. You're also operating on some previous evidence that you know of. Like, the previous time you sat on the chair just held your weight. And then, if you're a massive corporeal manifestation weighing 200 kilograms and you notice a small squeaky chair, you probably don't think it's going to hold your weight. You might actually try it a little bit. With one ass cheek first, you wiggle it a little bit, you hear the chair letting out the final death squeak, and you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to sit on it. So, like, faith is, having faith in God. I mean, you've never seen God, you never interacted with God, but you have faith that he exists. So, even though you have no evidence, you still have, like, that is what faith is. Imagine the precedent that would be set if someone sued their past self for all the bad decisions they made. Future self would be rich. But again, the way suing yourself can work is if there's like a tertiary person that has to cover for you. So like someone else has to pay it. In this case, it was either an insurance company or a corporation. If you sue yourself for the past and you have to pay damages, unless you have like a time machine, I guess, like you sue yourself from the past, your past self has to live a miserable life, but then pay the earnings to your future self. I mean, that's kind of like having an investment, wouldn't it, right? So yeah, if you had a time machine, you could go back in time to when you're 18, you sue yourself, and then your 18 self, right, like works hard for the next 20 years to pay you when you're in your 30s. And when you're in your 40s, you get the money for having sued yourself, and it's kind of like an investment. But it still wouldn't be a good deal simply because you would account for inflation. Like, your 18-year-old self, like, let's say you're 50 now. When you were 18, $1,000 was worth a lot more than now. A different way of doing things would be, and I was thinking about it now, like, imagine if you could pay yourself when you were young. Like, you have a time machine, and you go back in time, and you give your 18-year-old $10,000. Like, you save a lot of money for 5 years, and then you go back in time, and you give your 18-year-old $10,000, and you say, hey, open a shop, or open a business, or do something, invest that money. Like, that would actually be a better way of using the time travel. That's just milking one timeline to benefit another. Yeah, but like the way I explained it, it's a lot better because you have inflation, your past self doesn't. So when you give money to your past self, you're actually giving more. Time travelers don't have wives? I mean, if you affect the past, you probably have the butterfly effect so that you never met your wife. And getting attached would be very difficult. I mean, imagine if you actually fall in love with a woman, and I mean like deeply in love, and you have a very fulfilling marriage, but then you go back into the past, and you manage to wreck the first date you had with that woman. Like, she doesn't know you, but you know her. And you act like a creep at that first date, or you act like an asshole, and she never wants to see you again. And you know, like, that particular woman, that special someone exists, and you can have a beautiful life with her, but you will never be able to because you wrecked that first date. V seems only to respond to mods. Good old echo chamber. What are you talking about? Dude, there's so many people in the chat. You try doing it. You try streaming and respond to every single person. Let's sigh. Sounds familiar? Why does it sound familiar? If you had given yourself that money, you would remember which means you're giving the money to a kid that I'll never become. He's in a different time. Yeah, well, like the whole time travel thing becomes a problem because, but like, what if you would have always given yourself? Nah, yeah, like it creates a paradox, doesn't it? Because if you give yourself the money, then obviously you're going to be erased from the timeline because you're going to make different decisions when you are a kid that you have never made otherwise while not having the money. So, yeah, you'd basically, like, cease to exist. Unless there's, like, a different time paradox. Like, there's also that time paradox where, you do something in the past and when you return to your present, things have changed, whether for the better or worse. There's only 131 people watching. It's not impossible. What the fuck are you talking about? Have you tried talking to like 5 people in real life? It's very difficult. Now try talking to 131. I know like there are other streamers that talk with more, but I'm getting old. I'm becoming a boomer, so. Alright, let's talk about Canada now, because there are 131 people watching, as you have pointed out. Let me see if I can find the article. There we go. Conservatives say curbing debate online streaming bill is draconian and disturbing. The federal government is cutting short debate on MPs on its online streaming bill, a move Tory MPs have condemned as draconian and disturbing. They say curbing scrutiny on the bill line by line in committee is an attempt that the government has to rush through the House of Commons and will lead to the creation of a flawed and incoherent law. So, yeah, I mean, the Justin Trudeau government is trying its best to pass this as soon as possible. And what this does is it regulates online interaction. It regulates Netflix. It regulates Spotify. But the way the bill is written, even though it's not supposed to regulate YouTube, it does. So it regulates YouTube and TikTok. How are they going to enforce it? I don't know. But again, the thing is, the law is the law. Like, it doesn't matter if the politicians didn't intend to have certain effects. Once the bill is passed, it does have those effects. And if they're ambiguous, then it's up to the judge to decide how it goes. But preferably, you shouldn't have that situation. Bill C-11, as it's known in Parliament, updates Canada's broadcasting laws and would regulate streaming services such as Netflix, as well as YouTube, Spotify, and TikTok. The Liberals have given MPs until midnight to table amendments to the bill and until Tuesday evening to scrutinize it clause by clause in committee. The government says that it is a guillotine motion on steroids. Green MP Mike Morris questioned why such seemingly extreme measures are needed when we are not expecting an election this summer. I love the fact that the internet needs to be censored every time there's an election. Like, every time there's an election, they're talking about censoring the internet. Did you notice that? Every single democratic nation does that now. And when you have a nation that does what should be done, Nigeria, and they're saying, okay, well, the internet interferes with our elections, we're going to shut down social media for the time of the election. Like, 1 month before the election and until it's over, no more social media, no more Twitter, no more Facebook, nada, zilch. And the U.S. government freaked out about it. It's like, oh, but we have free speech, and oh, you can't censor Twitter because free speech. It's like, yeah, but like if Twitter, so like you can't censor Twitter because it has free speech, but you don't have free speech on Twitter. Because I remember correctly, the Nigerian president and some of his government officials got banned from Twitter for spreading misinformation. So the Nigerian president went like, oh, so you're banning us? Okay, well, then you're banning you. Fuck you, yeah? And the American president was like, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't ban Twitter. Twitter can ban you, but you can't ban Twitter. He said that the bill had broken the committee. Both Heritage Minister Pablo Rodriguez and Ian Scott, chairman of broadcasting regulator, the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunication Commission, were unable to speak during their allotted slots as committee witnesses. I notice this happening more and more today. You know, like, there's no more two sides of the same issue. There is just the correct side and misinformation. And the people from the quote-unquote bad side, they're not allowed to speak. They're not allowed to... They and other witnesses, due to be questioned by the committee, had to wait and then leave while Tory MP Rachel Thomas talked at length on procedural issues. The minister and Scott returned at later dates while other witnesses were unable to give evidence. Thomas argued that more witnesses were needed before the committee considered amendments. So anyway, what I do find it interesting, I love it. Like, Canadians asked us to pass it. You know, like, I wouldn't doubt it necessarily. Like, I noticed that various countries have different cultures, if you will. And while this would never work in Romania or Hungary, when you have a society like Canada, which actually values safety over liberty, yeah, it can work. Like, I don't believe that Canadians actually want the internet to be censored. I genuinely believe that. Now, obviously, it's not all Canadians, but it's mostly the Canadians from the cities. There's also a difference in culture between people living in a rural area and people that live in an urban environment. But in Canada, most elections are won based on the cities. So yeah, they probably legitimately... Like, one of the problems with a lot of political commentators on our side, you know, that value freedom and liberty, is that they assume everyone values freedom and liberty. But that's literally not the case. There are many people who just value safety. Like, they want to have the government keep them safe. They view the government as the father. So they actually promote this. Like, they want this. The correct side, the side with the power to suppress. Yes. I love it. It's like the right side of history. Well, it's more like the side that wrote the history. I mean, think about the American Revolution. Like when you guys managed to get independence from the British Empire. Right? Like you guys consider the founding fathers as heroes, and they are. I mean, I think they are some of the most inspirational and most powerful statesmen that the world has ever seen. They created one of the best societies that the world has ever seen. But now imagine if the English Empire would have won the American Revolution. Well, your founding fathers would have been arrested, considered as traitors, and history would have condemned them. So it really matters on who gets to win. It really matters, if you have the power to oppose, like your founding fathers had the power to oppose the British Empire, it also matters if you win. Because if you don't, then, well... Australia is also a very urban nation. Yeah, like mostly urban nations are the ones that value safety over freedom. I don't know why that is. I think it's also due to the mindset that a farmer has. Like a farmer is more self-reliant. He probably interacts with the government in a very unpleasant manner. Like the farmer knows what needs to be done. And then the government comes and says, oh, you're not allowed to use this fertilizer. You're not allowed to use this type of tractor because it's polluting. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that. So the farmer starts disliking the government. Meanwhile, people in the cities, they're not self-sufficient. Even like the ones that have their own business, they still rely on supply chains to arrive on time. They still rely on... the police to protect them. Again, like if you're in a rural area and the police is like 1 hour away and you have like a wild boar in your backyard where the kids are playing, like you can't wait for the police to protect you. You need to handle that situation yourself. But meanwhile in the city, that's not the case. Like in the city, the police can literally arrive in 5 minutes, depending on where you are. So people in urban areas, they're a lot more trained to look at the government as the father. And on top of that, you also have the corporations. Like most people in the cities work at corporations where they have these indoctrination seminars by the HR that's called corporate culture. And they're told how to behave and they're told how to think and they're told, like the correct opinions. I remember when the pandemic happened and people didn't go to work, there was a BBC article which stated that how are we going to have diversity and inclusion if people don't go to work? Like literally, there was a BBC article asking that. Because it's like, they pointed out, oh, well, if people stay home, they're just going to segregate. Because the HR is the one promoting integration and the one promoting, yeah? So they were like really worried because they realized that a lot of the mentality that people in the city has is also dictated by the corporations. I mean, the corporation is kind of like the new church, really, to an extent. What I mean by this is that people in a village or a town, they would all congregate to church on Sunday, like before social media. That's pretty much how people interacted with each other. They would take their families to church, and they would listen to the sermon, they would listen to the priest, but afterwards they would talk with each other, and sometimes the priest would dictate like how you should behave and how you should think about things. And now it's the same, right? Like you have these corporate retreats, and you have the HR, which tells you, it's like, okay, well, this is how you need to think about these issues, and this is how we do things, and right? So it took the role of pushing morality onto the masses. They also have wild boar. Oh my god. Bernie said this way back when. I didn't know that. I'm glad that me and Bernie are agreeing with a lot of things, although it seems to be the Bernie from the past. I had to phone the police because a homeless person was in my work harassing the guests. They phoned back like 30 minutes later after she'd already left, asking if she was still there. Well, obviously it depends, man. Like, you don't know what happened in your city. There could have been like 5 robberies going on at the same time that you called. But like most of the time, the police does answer. Look at Japanese society. Very hierarchical, very structured. No real problems with crime. But individual freedom, look somewhere else. Yeah, I always wanted to say that, societies don't have... How should I put it? But when it comes to politics, you don't really have the concept of fixing the problem. What you do have is trade-offs, right? Like, this is why I hate the concept of, oh, we're progressing. Like, this is progress. Like, progress can be technological, can be scientifical, but I don't think, like, society can progress. I think what you get is trade-offs. So, like someone pointed out, yeah, people in Japan, yeah, sure, they don't have high crime rates, but they have very high suicide rates. They have very high problems with depression. A lot of people, I'm going to read an article on my main channel, maybe in a couple of days or so, about people who are in their 30s and they're not interested in dating. Right? And that's pretty much what happens in Japan. Is that a good thing? I don't know. Now, of course, because of progress, like of technological progress, certain horrible things that people did in the past don't happen today. Like, for example, the concept of classic imperialism, where you have a country that just conquers territory. Well, that happened at a time where food was scarce. But now, because we have the technological advancement to create massive amounts of food and feed an entire population, that sort of thinking is outdated. Like, it's not required, basically. So that's why we can say, oh, well, we progress because people aren't as barbaric as they used to be in the Middle Ages, right? Where there were constant warfare and whatnot. But if you were to take away the food from people, and you made people starve, and you told them, well, the only way you can get more food is if you conquer more land, all of a sudden you're going to see that modern people with the same mentality that we have now would become very similar to the same morality that people in the Middle Ages had. It's just like we managed to fix those problems using technology. You get a speedy trial in Japan, you are just guilty by default. I don't know about Japanese legal system, so I can't pronounce myself on that. I don't mind the loss of freedom to some extent for social cohesion, but when your financial choices are limited for your own good, it's an exploitative issue. I think, like, the best type of freedom that people should have is economic freedom. Like, if the government just leaves the economy alone, I don't care about anything else. Like, if you have but like, throughout history, most of the dictators, they cared about social issues, but they also cared about economic issues, right? Like, it's very rare that you would have a dictator which, cares about social issues and leaves the economy alone. Like, trade what you want, do what you want, I don't care, I'm not, like, low taxation, very little interventionism in the economy. Like, that really doesn't happen. I think, like, it happened in Chile. Like, it's one of the first military juntas which actually allowed economic freedom, shockingly. But other than that, I can't think of any other time in history where that happened. Where it's like, okay, well, culturally you have to think like this, okay? Like, this is how our country is like. You have to like this, otherwise you can go to prison. But economically, do whatever. I don't care. Trade with whomever, do whatever business deals you want, do whatever. The government doesn't care. Would you support the monarchical regime that did that? Just had a strong centralized state. Okay, the idea of monarchy coming back can't really happen. Like, the reason people believed in monarchy, because believing in monarchy means that you believe a person has more rights than you. Like, that person, because of the status of his birth, because he is born that way, he gets to have subjects. Now, we still have monarchies in the world today, but they're mostly ceremonial. Like, they're not really the same like the monarchies of old. And the monarchies of old weren't that way because people actually believed in God. And they believed that God actually owns the country, and God anointed that one person to be your king. So God gave everything to that one person because he is the best suited for... But if you had that today, right, like who would you view as a monarch? Honestly, like, out of all the statements today, like, who would you see... All right, well, I want, I don't know, Boris Johnson as the monarch, right? Other people would say that, no, Boris Johnson is not fit. Like, why should he be the one? No, I want to be the one. And you would have like constant revolts. You'd have like constant uprisings. You'd have like constant political backstabbings. I don't view our way of thinking to be compatible with an actual monarchy. I think in a way the ability of people to believe that there can be change, like you're not going to have the same person just constantly in power, is also a good thing. Right? Like, can you imagine if, I don't know, Justin Trudeau, right? Can you imagine if Justin Trudeau would be in power until he dies of old age? Like, he would always be in power. I mean, imagine how the people in Canada would feel about this. Like, you feel so powerless, right? That's why anarcho-monarchy is the best way to go. Every man is the king of his own land. Well, the problem is, the nation state is the most effective force that humanity has at waging war. I mean, throughout history, the nation state has been proven to be the best way of defending and conquering others. Now, if you actually have like an anarcho-monarchy where everyone is the king of its own castle, the moment North Korea or China comes in, you have no defense against that. They're going to be well too organized, well too capable, not at providing their citizens with a better lifestyle, but at taking stuff away from other people. We do have the same bureaucrats that he hired. That is correct, right? Bureaucracy is a problem. Anyway, right, let's go on Twitter and see Jordan Peterson. Now, there's one more thing I want to touch about before I move away from this subject. So, there is this amendment which says that YouTube and other social media companies like Spotify should promote Canadian authors and Canadian artists. Now, this didn't come as a shock to me to see that a lot of Canadians like this. They like this level of protectionism, if you will. So, protectionism means that your government manipulates the economy to favor the people in Canada. This can be done with farmers. Like, you know, like, if you're a supermarket, let's say Canada, you have to have like 30% of your stocks with Canadian goods or whatever, right? But the problem with this, imagine if every country did the same. Like honestly, if I was the United States and Canada would pass a law saying that YouTube has to promote Canadian artists. In response to this, I would make it, okay, so the US has to promote now American artists. This actually backfired on America during the Great Depression. So during the Great Depression, I forgot who the brainlet in chief was. But after the stock market fell in the US, he said, all right, well, let's have protectionism. Let's make it so that companies have to sell and prioritize American citizens and American goods. And this sounded good on paper, but the moment they enacted it, other countries, they started banning American products because of it. It's like, oh, so you don't want our stuff. Like, our stuff is not good enough for you. Okay, well, we're not going to take American stuff. So that's pretty much what happened when you have protectionism. Like, in a world where policies are being reciprocated, like, you treat me nicely, I treat you nicely. If you behave like an ass, then we're going to behave like an ass towards you. In a world that's like that, it's not good to have like protectionist policies. But secondly, the fact that Canadians have, oh, well, I watched Canadian TV and there were like a lot of Canadian shows, and you know, if this wasn't the case, I wouldn't have seen my favorite Canadian stuff. It's like, okay, but like, you're literally implying that Canadian stuff is inferior, and the only way that it can be promoted is if the government promotes it, right? Like you're basically saying Canadian artists can't compete with American artists, so the only way that you can have Canadian artists is if the government promotes them. I don't think that's the case, right? I mean, I would prefer a world where you have democracy and people vote with their wallet. Here's an example, right? this is one of my favorite shows. At least the first seasons. The later seasons were absolutely horrible and atrocious. I don't recommend them. But like the first seasons, season 1 and season 2 was great. The 100, right? Like this is a Canadian show. And it's really great. I recommended it to people. It was awesome. I'm really sad that it ended. Some beautiful actresses here, you know, like I never seen this actress before, but now she's one of my favorites. And it's Canadian. Now, it didn't get to the point what it is because the government pushed it. It didn't get like, oh, you have to like this. You have to promote. No, like I watched the concept. I watched the trailer. I was like, okay, well, this is kind of interesting. I thought that it's going to be like a popcorn flick where I just see some beautiful teenagers having like the Lord of the Fly thing going on. But then when I watched it, it was so much more and the plot was so well detailed. And I was like, okay, so that's how things should work. That's how it should. Now, someone actually said, oh, if you don't have protectionism, then American culture dominates everything. And that's literally not true. Now, while there are a lot of, American influences because the internet and whatnot, America is actually starting to wane when it comes to creating good culture. Like, I don't remember many shows that came out of the US or movies that I enjoyed recently. However, I can give you at least 10 animes that I like. So Japan, a nation much smaller than America, is now pushing comic books away using manga, is pushing the American shows away using anime. South Korea is pushing some really good movies now, right? So I don't think you actually... I mean, sure, you have an advantage if you're an American company because of English and whatnot, right? But there are other countries that are now pushing America because America is a little bit stagnant. It's not creating anything. Like, look at Hollywood. Everything is a sequel. Everything is a prequel, a reimagining. They're not creating stuff. It's not even about the woke thing, which woke to me is more like corporatism. Like, they removed art from the person, and it's now like a corporate thing where you have people joining a boardroom and they're talking about, right, well, what makes it popular. Let me show you something. What I mean, okay? And when you see it, like if it's kind of funny because the people who actually work in the industry, like when I showed them this picture, they're like, oh, well, that's just normal. That's how we create movies. But the people who aren't in the industry were completely baffled. Like, they didn't believe that this is the case. Okay, so this is the way they came up with the concept for Star Wars High Republic. I don't know if you have read it, but you probably didn't, right? You probably didn't. If it was a manga, that was you probably had read it, but this right. So this is how they go, right? They talk about, all right, let's make Star Wars the High Republic. So Star Wars the High Republic is a comic book, which, as you can imagine, takes place in the High Republic, right? So this is what they want to create. It's like, okay, well, people are going to read this. Now, do they have a person that came up with an interesting story, with an interesting concept? No. What they do is, like, they get a couple of people in a room, and then they write this on a whiteboard, and it's like, okay, well, what is Star Wars? Right? Like, fiction, Star Wars wishes. So, for them, Star Wars is diversity. Like, diversity is so important, it's actually written twice. I think I see it. Yeah, you get diversity here and here, right? And then it's like, what else we have with stuff? We have feelings. I see. We have surprise, right? Because like they look at Darth Vader going, it's like, I'm your father, so this is surprised. Authentically lived in. I know what the left means by authenticity, but I don't understand how it fits here. Authenticity, it means that if it's a Asian story, it has to be written by an Asian. If it's a story about a mother, it has to be written by an actual mother. This is what they mean about authenticity. Like, if I were to write a story about a mother that's trying to protect her children in World War II, it wouldn't be an authentic story because I'm not a mother with children. That's what the left means by authenticity. Relatable characters, sweeping epic, right? And then like Star Wars, the first thing, literally the first thing, not pro-war. I mean, sure, you know, you can make a Star Wars that's not pro-war if you want, I guess. But why would you do that? Like, people want to see the lightsabers flying. People want to see, you know, the Empire attacking. That's literally the main focus that attracts people. That, yeah, if you're really confident about your writing and you're like, oh my god, I'm the best writer ever. I don't need to follow the formula. I know that whatever I do, it's going to sell. Yeah, you can make a Star Wars that's not pro-war, but like, why though? And then I'm like, oh, droids, scope mythic, space and lightsaber battles, which again goes against the vision of not pro-war. Like, the reason they have not pro-war here is because they're leftists, you know? It's like, oh, we're with peace and blah, blah, blah. No single main character, the Force, right? So, like, what is the problem with it? Well, it has no soul. It's like you're creating Frankenstein. You're taking different corpses of what worked in the past and you're stitching them together. Right? Like, that's the problem with this way of making art. And you know, like, if you make, like, 10,000 movies like this, maybe, like, 2 or 3 would be successful. But, number one, they're not original. Like, all of these things, like, you're taking concepts from stuff that worked in the past. And people, like, the thing with art, it's not like a vacuum cleaner. Like, a vacuum cleaner, you take something from the past, and it's like, oh, well, this vacuum cleaner model was good. Let's improve on it, right? You can do that. But like with art, if people saw it before, they don't want to see it again. People want to see something new. They want their senses stimulated. So while you're having this with the West, Japan is like, okay, well, this girl died and she got reincarnated as a spider in an RPG. That's mind-boggling. Like, no one thought about it. No one tried that before. I mean, sure, you have, like, the isekai thing, where it has been tried, and maybe, you know, you have someone in an RPG environment, but, like, to be an enemy, like, you're the bad guy, right? And you're not even the powerful bad guy. You're a small minion, and you're trying to evolve and stuff, and it makes an interesting story. It makes it for a very new thing that people haven't seen before. And you're not going to get that with this. Like, I'm sorry, this is not the thing. It puts the grand narrative and parrots the message. A little bit, yes. Designed by committee. Yeah, like designed by committee. I wouldn't say it never works. Again, like if you do this 10,000 times, eventually you might get a couple of movies that stick. You know, like the law of average dictates that eventually it's going to work. But I don't like it. You know, like the only way you should have this, I suppose, if it's like a TV show and at the end of the season you have the writers catching up so that they know what to do the next season. Because on a TV show you have multiple writers. But I feel like the best way to make stories is with 1, maybe 2 writers. That's it. The moment you have like so many, it stops being a story. It becomes this Frankensteinian corporate monstrosity that you're seeing here on the table. I mean, look at manga, right? Like Berserk. One person was writing. Dragon Ball. One person was writing. Like, most of the stories that are good are written by one person. Like Star Wars, George Lucas. Lord of the Rings. The Tolkien. It's very difficult to have multiple people writing something that's good. It can happen, but usually not so much. 1, maximum 2 people, I would say. Even Better Call Saul, it has 2 writers, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Star Trek Discovery had like 9 writers. That's insane. That is so freaking insane. 9 writers. I mean, not only that, but like think about the think about the writing style. Like, there's no way that 9 people can have the similar writing style. So when you're the viewer, you're going to see an episode that's really great, and then you're going to see an episode that's really shit, and that puts you off. You know, like, and I have seen this in some Star Trek Discovery episodes. Like, they had a concept that was really good, and I wanted them to build up on it, but then eventually they just ruined the concept. And I was like, oh god, like, why did they did this? I remember, like, when making my reviews on Star Trek Discovery, this was the case. I was constantly saying, oh wow, like, this is so interesting. Like, I wish they would do more of it. And then, no, they would do the opposite. Avatar had 2. Yeah, I think 2 writers can be done. Like, you can do it with 2 writers. But like more than that, it's already pushing it. Like less is more. And this is the perfect situation to illustrate that. The gazebo is only a dream. Man, like, allow me to pay for my house. I still haven't paid the mortgage for my house. Why would I build a gazebo before finishing paying for my house? That's kind of weird. You Americans, this is why you're crying about student debt. Because you don't know how to handle your finances. You think that, oh, well, this is something that blew the mind of many Americans, right? So, I want to own a house, okay? I go to the bank, I make the mortgage, and now I'm paying a monthly fee. The first thing that I want to do, literally the first thing that I want to do is to get rid of that mortgage. So every month, everything that I make is put towards the bank, right? Like, I don't care if the mortgage is $200, okay? If I make $2,000 a month, all of that goes to the bank. And the Americans are like, but like, why? Why are you doing this? And I'm like, because, first of all, like, I don't know what the future brings. Like, in the future, maybe the economy goes to shit and the mortgage goes up. Maybe I lose my job. Like, while I'm making money, I want to pay it as fast as possible. I want it out of my head, okay? And Americans aren't like that. Like, Americans will take a loan for 30 years and then they will actually pay it for 30 years. I don't want to end up with 30 years. I want to pay it as soon as possible. And right, so an American would make the loan, he would pay it in 30 years, and then he would start buying furniture, he would start buying the gazebo, he would start spending on other stuff. And when something bad happens, like he loses his job, he starts panicking, because he's like, well, why is this happening to me? It's like, well, you didn't manage your finance properly. I'm looking at also people who get caught in student debt. Like, let's say they want to go to a university and they have to borrow, I don't know, I'm pulling this out of my ass, $10,000, right? That's all they need for that university. They go to the bank and they find out that they can borrow all the way up to $20,000. They borrowed the fucking $20,000. Like, this just mind fucks Eastern Europeans. Like, I just don't understand why you would do that. Like, just because you can borrow more than you need, why would you? Like, you have to pay it back plus interest. Why are you crippling yourself like that? If you have to get 10,000, just get 10,000. And then it's like also the another American thing that I don't understand. Let's say they want to buy a car, right? Like, you have this guy, he wants to buy a car in order to do Uber. So it's like an investment, right? Okay, fine. If you buy a car to do Uber, you don't need a good car. Like, you don't need the most expensive car on the market. Normally, you would go for the cheapest. Like, okay, you look at the car and you're seeing how much gas does it consume, how much the parts for repairing cost, and you buy that. But no, like, I see Americans that are like, no, they buy like the most expensive one that they can afford for the loan that they're allowed to have. And it's like, why? Why are you doing this? 10,000 is so naive. I'm talking about how much it would cost here, but let's say it's 100K, right? Like, let's say it's 100K and the bank allows you to borrow 150. Why would you borrow 150? 100K on arts degree program. Enjoy the recession. Oh my god. You know, like the thing with abolishing student debt, like I'm really surprised that right-wingers don't bring up this talking point, but they should. And the question is, it's like, okay, so let's say we abolish student debt. What's to prevent the next generation of students from reaching the same situation? Because, like, you're not fixing the crisis. Like, okay, you're saying that there is a crisis because people are having debts. Fine. Like, that can be fixed. Let's say you abolish student debt. But the next generation still is going to make debt. Like, how are you fixing it? How are you fixing the problem? And the answer is they don't. It's all about voting. You know, you give people free shit and they vote for you. That's what it is. Like, they don't want to fix the problem. And it's so bizarre. Like, there are people who make loans in order to have their own business. So they make a loan. They start their business go bankrupt. Bad investment. Okay, you know, it happens. But they're not going to get their money back. Like, they're not going to get their loan forgiven. There's people who make loans to buy a house. For some reason, they're not going to have their loan forgiven. It's just the people who make loans to go to university. So the bourgeois, literally the bourgeois, the nose up class, and again, it's because they probably vote left. That's why. You know, like a person that starts a business, probably an entrepreneur, understands how the economy works, probably votes right. So they're not going to get their loans forgiven. Honestly, they should. Like a right-wing party just to get votes should also consider, okay, let's abolish small entrepreneur debt. If you're a small entrepreneur, if you try to start a business and it didn't work, we're going to abolish your debt. Oh my God, like you're going to see the left freak out. Like they're going to go so, like you don't have to do this, but just threaten them that you will. And they're going to get so insane. Like they're going to lash out at the young entrepreneurs because most of the established left right now in most countries, they're sponsored by big corporations. Big corporations don't want young entrepreneurs. They don't want competition. They don't want you to start your own stuff. They want them to have the power to keep having as much monopoly as possible. The business can file for bankruptcy, students cannot. Yeah, but like if you buy, let's say, a coffee shop, right? You can file for bankruptcy, but you're still losing your money. Like if you mortgage your house for that loan, you're still losing your house, even if you file for bankruptcy. Don't put everything you have into investing. Yeah, like the thing with investing is, first of all, you need money to invest. And secondly, you need to invest a sum that you're comfortable with losing. So if you're not comfortable with losing the money, don't invest. Why not go all out and forgive all types of loans? That would be interesting. It's not necessary if business can file for bankruptcy. Okay, maybe like your law and your legislation is different than Romania. But let's say you have mortgaged your house. And you're going to lose your house. And you're going to be homeless. Right? Isn't that also a good reason to have like forgiveness, like student loan? Abolish mortgage loan then? You cannot go bankrupt on your student loan. Yeah, I understand. But you also can't go bankrupt on your mortgage loan. Americans, at least old school Americans, are willing to work hard, but want to look a gift horse in the mouth. Good deal is a good deal if there is easy out. Marxists are an evil infiltration. I'm okay. You see the complete collapse of the economy. I know. But like, why stop there? You know, like if you're going to abolish student debt, abolish all that then. Okay. If the economy doesn't matter, hey, look, the economy isn't important. If only we can save one life, right? Isn't that what I've been told? Isn't that what I've been told? If only we can say, okay. Right, let's go to Jordan Peterson's timeline, because he had some interesting takes on this. Every time I was told about college when I was a kid, it was about money. Like, you'll make way more money if you go to a college diploma. Okay, I'll tell you how the thing with the college is like. So, back in the day, usually before World War I, the people who went to university were the elites. Like, if you got into a respectable university like Harvard, well, you would manage to become an elite. Like, you are guaranteed that you would be what was called at the time high society. And the thing is, like, there were just very few people that went to university. So, obviously, there are very few people for people available to go into high society. It's a supply and demand thing. Now, after World War II, because people got very rich, more and more people went to universities. And they created the mentality that you go to university to avoid doing certain jobs. So you're going to university to avoid being a truck driver. Like, truck driving became almost like a stigma, right? Like, you go to university to avoid doing the menial labor. Like, you avoid being a builder. You avoid being a plumber. Like, those are icky professions, right? So you go to university to avoid doing that. The problem is, like, so many people went to the university, especially with public with public education system, that right now, even if you're at a useful university, like, let's say you have a useful skill, so not like a lesbian dancing master. No, like, you're generally something that does something tangible. Like, let's say you're a veterinarian. Okay, well, if you're a veterinarian and you open a veterinarian clinic, you're going to harm all the other veterinarian clinics on that block, because chances are there's probably another veterinarian clinic on that block, because there's so freaking many of them. And there isn't that demand for so many veterinarians, meaning that the economy can't integrate these people anymore. So even though they may be the best veterinarian ever, even though they might be very skilled at their job and very dedicated and they love kittens and puppies, the economy just doesn't know what to do with it. There's too many. Meanwhile, the reverse is true. Like if you look at what is it? Builders, truck drivers. Like there's a shortage of truck drivers now because people avoided that. So now there's a need for truck drivers. So if you go into truck driving, you make more money and you don't have to get a university degree. But for some reason, the culture is still operating on the fact that, well, truck driving is icky. Like who wants to be a truck driver? Am I right? But in reality, the truck driver is a smarter person than the one that has like 2 university diplomas in his drawer and doesn't use any. And he worked really hard, like he studied 10 years to get those diplomas. And he can't find a single job because the economy doesn't need that. And the truck driver is making like $6,000 a month. So what ends up happening is that these people that went to universities, they're very bitter and they blame the system. They blame capitalism. They're not noticing the problem. And the problem is that public education is a thing. Everyone wants to go to these specific jobs. So the law of average, like that, mathematically speaking, you don't need those many people in a society. Like you don't need 10 million lawyers. You don't need 10 million veterinarians. Like you just... So all these people are bitter. They feel like they've been wrong. They feel like they are greater because they finished a university and they have a diploma. So they're very vindictive, and they blame capitalism. They blame the man. They're going to vote for abolishing student debt and all that shit. And they're going to hate the other people that are making money. Like, I know people who go to universities and they're looking like, oh, why is this truck driver making so much money? Why is he making so much money? He didn't even go to university. There are a couple of business entrepreneurs in my country which are millionaires. And I think like even in America, there might be a couple that don't have a university degree. I think one of them might have been Steve Jobs. I'm not really sure. But like there are a couple of like very famous people which don't have a university degree. And people are like, they don't even have an education. They don't have an education. How are they millionaires? Why are they millionaires? Because they don't have the education. And this is because of the resentment that they have, right? Like they view that the struggle that they experience needs to be experienced by other people. And the thing is, like, when everyone has an education, everything now requires a degree. Like, the jobs that my parents are doing, when they started doing it, they didn't require to show any degrees. But the new people coming in doing the exact same job, they need to show certification. They need to show, like, oh, you finished some courses. You finished the university. Right? Bill Gates dropped out. Well, exactly. Bill Gates dropped out. He's so uneducated. Why does this? Now, what's interesting is I would love to see this social experiment done in action. I would love to test this theory out, but there's no way I can. I would take a generation and have the kids at 6 months be sent to a walking training school, right? So at 5 months, you need to send your child to a school that teaches them how to walk. My hypothesis is that if you do that for a generation, people will believe that human beings cannot walk unless they're being sent to that institution. Like they will rationalize themselves into thinking that the walking expert is the only person capable of teaching people how to walk, and without them, human beings can't walk by themselves. I am willing to put money that this is going to happen within 1 generation. You don't even need 2. Like, people are going to rationalize themselves into thinking that, oh my God, I don't have money to send my kid to the walking school. What am I going to do? Like, he's going to walk by himself. What if he falls down? What if he falls down? If he falls down and he gets injured, oh my God, what do? We need money to send our kids to walking training school. Thank you for the $5, B. Comentes. Biggest scam about college. Why do you need the entire degree and not a few classes? Why does a chem major need an art class? I actually know this. It's because there are professors who are completely useless. But the way people think about it, it's like, okay, but like if we remove this from the curriculum, that professor loses his job. So when I was at high school, I remember going at waking up at 7:30 a.m., going to high school, and I would come home at around 3:30 p.m. And after that, I had homework. Like, literally, I was working 10 to 11 hours a day. I would be in high school, I would come home, I would then start studying. Memorizing shit, doing the actual exercises, and whatever, right? So eventually the question comes, like, do I really need all the shit that's being at high school? Like, do I need physical education? Do I really need physical education? In my free time, I go out, I play tag, I play with other kids, I play ball in my own time. Why do I need to do that at school as well? Like, I don't like school. I want to come home. I want to come home to do my homework so then I can go out and do other things. Why do I need music lessons? Why can't they be optional? Like, sure, some people might like music lessons. Why do they have to be forced upon us? Why can't we just take the music classes, the people who are musically inclined? I don't like music. I hate music. I don't want to do it. I don't want to go there, right? So, you had like all of these extra things. And the reason you had them was so that professors can still have a job. Like, if you were to say no more music lessons, like it's optional, and you don't have a lot of students going to the music lessons, then the professor gets fired. So the only thing, and by the way, the reason I hated people like Simon Molskred from the bottom of my heart. The people that were like, oh, you need music lessons. How can you be a child without the music lessons? And the only way to learn music is through the school system. Nothing else besides the school system can teach you. So you go there and you sit there until 3:30 p.m. And then when you come home, you spend 5 more hours studying for the school. And you little bitch. And you're not going to complain. You hear me? You're not going to complain at all. That's your life from now on. I'm like, dude, shut the fuck up. You know, I don't need shit. I don't even remember the stuff I learned at school. I don't even remember, like, organic chemistry. You know, I went to med school. I used so little of that. And the little part that I used, we learned it at the spot. Like, when I went to the University of Medicine, we started chemistry from scratch. And I learned that. Why the fuck would I need mathematics as a doctor? Yeah, but like, you don't understand. Of course you need it. Like, shut the fuck up. I'll learn it on my own time. You now have, like, web-based application that calculates most medical formula, body mass index. There's a literal website for the body mass index. You type in the fucking numbers, and you're going to get the result. This the same thing for creatinine and other mathematical formulas that you need to use. Oh, you want to create a baby formula? There's a website for that. No doctor that I have seen actually does the mathematical calculations on paper anymore. The university got the money that the kids borrowed, but nobody accepts them to forgive the loans. Oh yeah, I keep saying that. It's like, why can't universities take the loss? Why can't? Oh. But like, seriously, you know, like, so many things that I'm thinking about high school that I learned and were completely useless. Absolutely useless. And they stressed me so hard because I had to memorize them. I mean, Romanian literature. I fucking hate it. Do you know how bad Romanian literature is? Why can't I read Harry Potter? I wanted to read Harry Potter. There was like this Romanian book which was like a fucking telenovela. I think I was like in 10th grade. I barely hit puberty and I was reading this book which was about a romance between some girl that cheated on her husband and they had to like figure out with whom she cheated. And I'm like, I didn't care about that. Meanwhile, I read some American shit called Vinnetou, and that was like really cool. Like, oh my god, cowboys, pew pew pew. That's something that I like. Like, choosing my own books to read is something that I really appreciated, but I couldn't do that in the schooling system because I had to read their books. And some of the books, by the way, now I would appreciate. Like, some of the books were really good, but at that age, I thought they were shit. Yeah, much worse than American, trust me. Like, especially when you read a story that's not for your age. Do you know what I read when I was in school? I read Jules Verne. Like, Jules Verne was really fucking amazing. BTFO, anything else that I read during the school. The professor needs a job too. Yeah, I know, but like, why does it have to be at my expense? That's the problem. You know, like, I'm fine with people having a job, but like, why does it have to be inflicted on me? Thank you you, number 3, for upgrading your membership. You lack discipline. Oh my god. Same for me and English literature. They were giving us useless books. Only Animal Farm was good. Yeah, I mean, English literature actually had some good books. Shakespeare Macbeth was something that I liked, but again, like, at that age, for me, it was a comedy, because I saw, like, that woman acting like a spoiled brat, and I really didn't understand what Macbeth was all about until I grew older. I hear the teacher forced me to read Nickel and a Dime, and she flunked me when I tore it apart. I don't even know what that is. Haven't read it. I think, like, the international literature just BTFO'd everything that Romania had to offer. And I really despise poetry. Like, poetry is something that I never gotten into. I'm not saying poetry is bad. Like, I'm pretty sure some people appreciate poetry, but I personally just hated it with a passion. And one of the reasons was that you had to memorize the verses. Like, you had to know the poems by heart, and it was like, God damn it! Make me memorize something that's actually useful. Why are you making me memorize this crap? Oh yeah, Charles Dickens was awesome. You know, Charles Dickens wrote the first isekai. I think A Night at the Court of King Arthur. Fucking read that. It's good shit. My English teacher called it cultural literacy. They taught us so we can understand cultural references. Most poetry is junk. Oh my fucking god, the Lucifer. Oh, fuck off. That one had like there's this let me show you the horror, okay? Hold on. The horror of Romanian poetry. So this is the Morning Star, okay? You have to read about the devil. Look how long it is. You have to memorize it. You have to memorize all this shit. Look at it. Look at it. Look at the shit. Look at it. Look, chat. Look. Oh my god. And you have to memorize this. And it's about like a moral woman falling in love with the Morning Star. Again, I didn't even hit puberty. I didn't even know what love is. Why are you making me read this? God. Poems should be creative, not mindlessly repeated. I know. Oh, probably why I have... You know, like, maybe in hindsight that I'm thinking, like, maybe this is why I have such a good memory, because I had to use it a lot when I was a kid. I don't know. I mean, probably not, though, because, like, other kids my age went through the same shit I do, and they don't have good memory, so I don't think it's really that. It's a beautiful poem, but it's a bit much to make people learn completely. Oh, well. I don't know. It's what it is. And then, like, the worst thing about it is that you had literary commentaries. I don't know if you did this in English. But you had to basically, like, give your opinion on certain things that you read. And there were just the correct opinions that you could have given. Because you had to cite authoritative critics. Right? So, like, think about it this way. This is how Romanian literature was like. You have this dead guy, which wrote a poem, right? Now, you're forced to learn that poem, whether you like it or not. And you have to give your opinion about that poem, but you have to only give it from authoritative critics, which also died. I mean, it's so dumb. I don't even know how to... Like, there's no creativity in that. You're just parroting... something that, God, I don't even want to go into it. Like, honestly, Romanian literature was probably my least favorite important subject. Because, like, this was important. You had to know it. Was considered, like, if you didn't pass it, you flunked. So. Yeah, but like, the thing is, you know, like, all people are like, oh, you need to learn music. Like, how can you go to school without mastering music? I don't know, motherfucker. How can you go to school without knowing how to make a resume? How can you go to school without knowing how to make your own taxes? How can you go to school without learning how to start a business? You know, I would think those are more important than, like, learning how to sing. Which you can do in your free time. Like, again, like, there is this thing called the free time, which people can do outside of the schooling system and learn stuff outside of the school. Yard work with V. Oh. You do yard work at this hour? It's 12 a.m. Yes, interpreting a poem is the worst because it has to be only one opinion. Yeah, it's only one opinion. Sometimes you have two opinions, but like some opinions were so dumb or so dumb. Like, hold on. Let me see if I can find it. Let me show you. Just so detached some of these were. I don't think I have it. God. Okay, so I think maybe this is the one. I don't know. I don't remember. Like it was when I was a kid, but there was this guy which was writing poetry, and he happened to be a mathematician. Okay, so a commentator went through his poems and like found that some words. I don't know if this is the one, but like he found that some words you can make a triangle out of. Right? So, like, imagine that you could, this word and this word was the same with this one, right? So he was like, oh, this is the triangle theory of Barbu. And I'm thinking, like, there is literally nowhere that Barbu said that he did this. Like, this is just your own fucking subjective opinion about him, which you're reaching based on the fact that he was a mathematician. So, therefore, he must have seen triangles everywhere and put the triangles within his poem. Like, this is some schizo shit that you're making me repeat. I disagreed with him. I vehemently disagreed with that critic, but I had to write it. And this was just like one example. Like, when you listen to what other critics said, I was wondering, like, dude, I've never smoked in my life, but all of these critics must have been very high when they were writing their criticism. It's like, yeah, it's kind of like an Easter egg. But like, it's like, interpreting coffee leaves, you know? It's like you get to see whatever you want to see, and they saw the most bizarre shit imaginable. And like the other thing which annoyed me, right? Like the lack of creativity was when the teacher, like especially at mathematics, like you would think mathematics doesn't really care about, creativity or whatnot. Like mathematics cares about you getting the right answer. And like there were the times where like, oh yes, you got the right answer, but you didn't use the method that I taught you. You didn't use the correct method. Like, fuck off. Maybe your method is wrong. Like, if it's harder, why would I use it? Oh no, but like you have to study it. Then give me a problem that can only be fixed by the method that you propose. Why are you doing this to me? What have I done to you to deserve this shit? It's kind of like let me show you what I mean, right? So let's assume okay. Let's assume that you have 8 plus 5, right? And I would be like, all right, well, this is 13. And the teacher would be like, no, this is not the method. The method that I told you is to do 8 plus 2, right, which is 10. And then, because you took a 2 from here, you need to remove it from the 5. And then it's like 5 minus 2, right, which equals 3. And then you do 10 plus 3, and that's how you know it's 13. And I'm like, why the fuck would I do it like this? It's like, well, because you have to memorize this method. And I'm like, okay, but give me a problem that I can only solve by using your fucking method. How about that? Why are you making me learn this shit? And you're subjecting me to this mental torment when I can just do it like this. God. Everyone is to think the same. I need to know his method. In America, we have academic honors and advanced placement. You learn nothing until advanced placement. Taking AP language, history, only time. Well, there is right now the World Economic Forum School of Young Children or something. I don't know what it's called, but like they're priding themselves that a lot of the people who graduated that are now world leaders, like Angela Merkel, Putin, many others, CEOs. You know, all the world governments have people from that school. And I'm thinking like, okay, so that is a school of elites, right? Like it's a very restrictive, very private school. Imagine if everyone in the world would go to that school. Do you think like everyone would manage to become a world leader, an elite, a CEO or some shit? No. That's literally what's happening with the education system. You can educate people, but at the end of the day, not everyone is going to be integrated into the market. You don't need 10 million lawyers for a nation. Like, it's too many. Wouldn't matter. By the way, and just like, I don't know if I should complain, right? But like, I'm just pointing out that no one does this anymore. Like, everyone in the world has this, right? Like, everyone in the world has this. Now, of course, they will say, well, yeah, but like, you need to learn to develop your brain and stuff. Yeah, I play video games for that shit. If I want to develop my brain, I play video games. Point and click adventure games. Those are the shit. Those develop your mind. Which is kind of interesting. Like, when I was a kid, point and click adventure games, like, they were so hard, so difficult. But now, like, every single point and click adventure game seems so banal to me. Like, when I play Monkey Island again, it's like, oh, so I need to do this and that and click, 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 you know. And I managed to speed through the games that I had so much difficulty as a kid. I don't know why. World Economic Forum, young global leaders can be in any role. Civ will make you good at math. Space Quest 4. Oh yeah, I just finished Space Quest 4. It's a really good game. I've been replaying a lot of point and click games from my childhood. Like, I literally don't know why they stopped making them, why they dropped out of a fashion. I believe it's due to now they have like this thing called hidden object games, which are a lot easier to make. And those are more catchy, but I sure miss point and click games. Like, they used to be the games that me and my cousin used to play when we were kids, and they were really beautiful. A really good way of telling a story. I guess like they're replaced by storytelling games now. You know, like what's it called? Life is Strange, right? Like, Life is Strange is a story-based game, or Detroit, Life is Toaster. You know, those games. So they're replaced by those, and I think that's why you don't get the classics. Man, like they're so. They are making a new Monkey Island game though. But to be honest, I really love Broken Sword. You know, God, now that I'm on a tangent, I realize just how much I miss the Indiana Jones type of adventure, right? Like Tomb Raider, Indiana Jones, Broken Sword, Uncharted. I really love that type of storytelling where you have someone going into an ancient ruin and discovering things. Now, I don't think you can do that nowadays simply because of, I mean, you know, going into an ancient ruin, like, okay, where are you going? Oh, well, we're going into the jungle. Like, what jungle? Like, because, like, everywhere has already been explored. So if everything has been explored, it's like everything has a Starbucks next to it. So, like, there is no mysticism. But what you can do in order to make a movie like that, have it on a different planet. Like, have an alien explorer, you know, traveling on another planet and discovering shit. Like, that would really be cool. And I think that would still sell. Antarctica. Yeah, Antarctica is actually still a place. But, like, it's not the same, you know. It's the cold. Like, if you make it in Antarctica, there always needs to be cold. But I would like it like going to a jungle, like, you know, Donkey Kong or something like that. That was cool. I kind of miss that. It's kind of sad. All right. I think we can. Should we wrap it up? No, I think we should actually go on Jordan Peterson's timeline. By the way, one more thing that I wanted to talk to people. This is usually what I make streams. I get a lot of complaints that I put too many ads, right? So the stream is up, people want to watch it, and there's like a gajillion ads. I don't do that. That's YouTube doing, right? So YouTube does it automatically. I have to remove that. So I have to remember to remove most of the ad breaks that YouTube puts on, because otherwise it's automatic. And yeah, I do understand why it's frustrating. Exactly, you know what Roland says is the sense of wonder. And if you have the sense of wonder nowadays, like let's say you have like some jungle explorers being kidnapped by cannibals. First of all, like I don't think it would work nowadays. But secondly, it would be very offensive, right? But if you have it on an alien planet, like you're on an alien planet and someone kidnaps the main cast and it's an alien race that are cannibalistic, well, now it's not offensive and it is believable to the audience. Like this is something else that's important. This is believability, right? So believability means it doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. It doesn't matter if it's logic or not. This is what EFAP fails to criticize accurately. Right, like EFAP will go and they would, oh, well, this doesn't make sense, this isn't logic, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's not the point. The point is, do the audience believe it? So, the audience, when my father was a kid, you show him Rambo, right? Like, my father never touched a gun. And you show him Rambo, and Rambo never reloads. Like, he just goes with two machine guns, and goes, and it keeps going and going and going, and he never reloads. The audience that never touched a gun from my father's time, they would believe that because they never seen combat. They don't know what it is, right? But if you make the same stuff today, when people play Call of Duty, when people have like at least a general idea of what a gunfight should be like they're like, well, I played Call of Duty. Like if someone like Rambo would go into the middle of the field with no cover, I mean, and there's 20 guys around him, like surely one of them would shoot him, right? So that's not believable anymore, even though it's the same scene. It's literally the same thing. And, you know, with Indiana Jones and ancient temples, it's the same thing. Like, people back then probably believed the whole temple scene. But people today who have access to the internet and, like, they looked at many trivia in their time and whatnot, they would not like, hold on, but like, that temple is 1,000 years old. Like, no one had the technology to build pressure plates back then. And, like, even if you build the pressure plates, like how would the vine manage to not degrade over time and snap, or an earthquake activating it by accident, or a monkey picking up that thing, right? So people today would have a much more difficult time believing what is seen in the first Indiana Jones, which at the time was a great scene. This is what I realized when I was 12 years old. That's not how you hold an M60, the army, blah, blah, blah. Rambo had the God mode and infinite mammo. Yeah. Your dad wasn't conscripted. No, he wasn't. He was born after World War II, so. Yeah, I mean, the problem is, I don't think a movie has to have anything like logic or, you know, even like internal consistency. The only thing it needs to have is, do the audience believe it? Like, when you're watching the film, do you believe it or not? Like, for example, when I see Rey Skywalker getting a triple kill while she's flying for the first, I don't believe that, right? But a lot of the scenes from The Mandalorian, even though they didn't make logic or sense, or like for example, let's put it like this way. Let's say there's a scene where Mando buys 10 rockets, right? And in the next episode, he uses 15. Now, that doesn't make logical consistency, because in the first episode, he only bought 10, but now he's got 15. But if it's an action-packed scene, and it looks really great, and it takes my mind off of it, I don't mind. Yeah, sure, you know, like, okay, the writers made a mistake. You know, he used 15 rockets when he only had 10. I'm willing to overlook that if it's actually entertaining in the moment. If the audience, as me, I don't question that. If I'm seeing it, I'm getting it. That's what I want to point out, you know? Small inconsistencies are okay, but the heart of the story. Yeah, like, a movie is to entertain. I completely agree. But, like, in order to entertain, I also need immersion. I mean, seeing the Emperor just pop out and basically, like, raising ships from the ground and shit. Like, that's not believable. Or the thing where Ray just goes in the correct spot and looks through the dagger at the correct angle and finds the exact correct thing. That breaks immersion. I'm like, get the fuck out. You know, that's ridiculous. Alright, well, I guess we were supposed to talk about Canada and stuff, but we end up talking about other things entirely. I apologize. But I do need to make videos for my main channel now, so thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate the super chats, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. I'm planning to get Sargon on again this weekend. Hopefully I'll manage to do that. Let me know what you think in the comment sections. I do read the comments on this. Maybe if I get a lot of comments, I might even read them on a live stream.